I have a story that I can't forget until today. At that time, I was home alone while my family went on vacation to our hometown to visit my grandparents. My hometown is quite beautiful because it is near the beach, and many people visit my hometown for beach activities. It's a pity because I had to stay at home to finish the work that I needed to complete. At 1:30 a.m., I was still watching a horror movie on the top floor. I really enjoy watching horror movies. For example, The Conjuring is one of my favorites. That night, I was watching a horror movie alone. I do enjoy watching horror movies, but I am a bit easily scared, especially when I am alone at home. I was confident that nothing would happen to me. Suddenly, I heard footsteps at the door of my house. I was sure that it wasn't a sound from the horror movie I was watching because I'm familiar with the sounds of people coming and going in my house. I wasn't surprised to hear the sound I was hearing now if my family was at home, but at this time, I was the only one at home. As soon as I heard the sound, I froze for a moment, scared and bewildered. I tried to focus on listening to make sure if it was indeed the sound of footsteps entering the house. Suddenly, I heard someone opening the door to go downstairs to the basement of our house. My hair stood on end, and I was really scared. All I could think of now was to hide from whoever had just entered my house. I quickly turned off the TV, got up from the chair, and hid behind the sofa. This sofa could completely conceal my body. If it was a thief, all I hoped for was that they would just take what they wanted and leave the house, as long as they didn't harm me. I realized at that time that only God knew how strong my heart was beating. My face and ears felt hot because I was very afraid. I closed my eyes to listen for the sound of someone walking, but for about 20 minutes, I didn't hear any sound. I thought to myself, maybe it's just my imagination, or maybe my mind is influenced by the horror movie I was watching and nothing actually happened. I waited to make sure that it was just my imagination and that there was no one else in the house. Those were the longest minutes of my life. The deafening silence in the house hurt my ears. Many questions arose. Was the person earlier hiding and waiting for me to come out? Or were they standing in front of the sofa watching me without moving, perhaps ready to attack me at any moment? Like I mentioned earlier, I am a scaredy cat, so what I am thinking now doesn't make sense anymore. The longer I waited, the more relieved I felt because I no longer heard the sound of someone walking. I was becoming more convinced that it was just my imagination. I decided to call the police because my family is difficult to reach, as they are in a remote area far from our home. At least the police can make me feel safe. Slowly, I made my way towards the telephone in our house. We have many telephone sets in our house, at least one set on each floor. The nearest phone set to me is located in the living room. Although feeling fearful, I gathered the courage to call the police.
Hill County 911, what's your emergency?
In a whispering voice, I replied, sir, I think there is someone in my house but I'm not sure. I am alone in the house. Can you send help? I provided them with my address, and they said they would arrive within 40 minutes. Because all the members were in a somewhat distant area from my home, I was okay with that because at that time, I felt quite sure that there was no one in the house, and maybe I was inconveniencing them by asking them to come. I then placed the phone on the hook and turned on all the lights in the house. I took a deep breath and silently said to myself, there, watching another horror movie alone, making all sorts of thoughts. Never mind, there's nothing anyway. I returned to the living room and watched TV again, while waiting for the police to arrive at my house. This time, I watched a different movie, The Avengers. Enough of watching ghost stories, I said to myself. 5 minutes later, someone knocked on my door.
Police, open up!
I opened it and saw 6 police officers without saying anything. They directed me to leave the house and sit in my car. I was stunned but followed their instructions. I said to myself, earlier they said they would arrive in 40 minutes, but they're here in 5 minutes. Why am I being arrested? Could it be they think I'm joking around? Inside the car, there was a female police officer accompanying me. I was confused and shocked. Ma'am, I asked, why am I suddenly being arrested? What she said surprised me greatly. The female police officer said, you are not being arrested, but we are trying to save you. Save me, I thought to myself. The police officer continued, when I called the police immediately after hanging up with you, the operator heard someone listening to our conversation, using another phone set. She said that after I hung up the phone, they heard another dial tone being placed, and at that time I informed them that I was alone at home. They believed there was someone else in the house besides me at that time. That's why they sent police officers as quickly as possible. I was stunned, unable to say anything. I gave no response, just looking at the police with wide eyes and a shocked expression. A few minutes later, a man in his 30s was handcuffed and taken out of my house. He was placed into a police car and taken to the station. This man hid on the lower floor of my house, lifted the phone while I was calling the police, and listened to our conversation. I was directed to go to the station to provide a statement. Right after that, I called my family and they hurried back from their vacation, home to my house the next day. I imagine if at that time the police took 30 minutes to arrive at my house, my life would have been in danger until today. I am now too afraid to be alone at home. I am traumatized, and I will stay at a friend's or relative's house or rent a hotel room if there is no one at home. Thank you all for watching my video.